see books the way reviewers do. The only problem is that being the reviewer time, it's such a good job. Somebody said once, if you're going to be a writer, get a day job, but don't get a good one. And I made the mistake of getting a job that was a bit too good. So it takes up a lot of time that I would sort of I'd rather use writing fiction. Yeah.
I haven't finished reading Magicians, but I know there was a sequel, and I was wondering if you planned on there being a sequel as you were writing it, or did the popularity of it lead to you thinking about a sequel?
I can honestly say it never crossed my mind until shortly before the book came out, the idea of doing a sequel. I guess I was kind of snobby about them. I thought, oh, you know, did Tolstoy write a sequel to War and Peace? I compare myself to Tolstoy all the time. Actually, my weird Russian first name is because my father named me after Tolstoy. That's why I have a weird Russian first name. Leo Tolstoy is an Anglicanization, and it's actually Lev Tolstoy. Anyway, so I really didn't think about it until right before the book came out, and then I started thinking. Well, also the other thing is, you know, when you're to novelists, you know, stories are never over. It's hard to. It's like a loose tooth. You keep picking at these characters and seeing, well, what would happen after that? What would happen after that? And then you end the book, but you keep thinking, what would happen after that? Where would they go? And I had an idea that I liked for where I could go with it. And fortunately, Viking, the publisher, said, you know, let's do it, let's go, let's write another one. Because this was sometimes you'll make a deal for multiple books, but I didn't make a deal for multiple books. They just bought one. And so, you know, if they hadn't, I guess if it had been a flop, and nobody would have published a sequel, but it's done well enough that I'll do a sequel. But yeah, I didn't, and you know, if I'd been really gaming it, there's maybe a couple characters I would have hung on to, not brutally killed off. They could have been useful in the event of a sequel, but too late. They can be in the prequel. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write The Magicians, and what's your schedule? Do you write fiction every day, or?
It took me 4 years to write The Magicians. I started in July of 2004, and then it takes about a year after somebody bought the book to just get it into production and put a cover on it and print a bunch of copies. So it took me about 4 years, which was hard. Really, it was really hard. You know, I had a full-time job. I had a very young daughter. It was difficult to make the time for it. And what I ended up doing, I think this is just sort of temperamentally the way I tend to work, is, you know, that thing about writing every day, and who was it? God, who's the Victorian novelist who? Well, I know Thomas Hardy would write a page every day, and then there's that Victorian novelist. God, is it Addison? I'm trying to remember who it is, who would write, you know, a set number of words every day, and if he finished a novel and the ending of the novel didn't line up with his quota for the day, he would start a new novel that same day. What a show off that would be. I can't do that, and for a while I just thought I was a failure because I couldn't write every day. But the truth is, you know, it's much easier for me to kind of binge and to do a long session. You know, it takes me about half an hour to sort of fully insert myself into the fictional world that I'm trying to describe, and also to make, you know, the various moves in Scrabble that I have pinned on Facebook. So once I've taken care of that important stuff, then I can start writing. But, you know, if I had to sort of go through that warm-up routine every day, I mean, I just would never get anything done. As it is, I practically get nothing done anyway. But so once I'm in, then I can keep going for a few hours and, you know, really just get some stuff done. So, you know, that's how I work. And, you know, I'm a slow writer, and I guess whatever. I'm living proof you can be an incredibly slow writer and have a full-time job and still finish the book that you're trying to finish.
Do you reread it as you're developing?
A lot, yeah. Probably too much. I wrote the first draft in a year, And then I went back and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote. It almost gets to be a bad habit after a while. Instead of writing new stuff, I would just endlessly, move the commas around. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, about Jonathan Franzen, who wrote the corrections, which is that I don't think it's apocryphal that he writes on a typewriter in a darkened room, which is sort of creepy. But you can sort of, I can see his point by doing that. But also that when he finishes a page, he takes it and he locks it in a vault or something, so he can't get at it, to keep himself from going back and endlessly revising, which seems like a good idea. So yeah, I revise a lot, probably too much. It's a curse of the word processor. It's just too easy to move chunks of text around. I know writers, including my brother, who's also a writer, who write longhand and just transcribe it, but I can't do it. I need to have it on the screen, because what I write, first draft, is so bad that it needs, major emergency surgery. Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about the magicians is how they go to school and their teachers are giving them all this knowledge and power and instruction, but there seemed to be an ethical component that wasn't being taught to them. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
An ethical component.
It kind of reminds me of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, how the girl was learning all that power, but she didn't quite have the wisdom to go with it.
Yeah, one of the things I thought when I was writing it is, in every, and another staple of fantasy novels is the kind of kindly paternal mentor figure, Dumbledore or Gandalf and stuff, who turns up, to help guide the hero on his quest. And one of the things that I thought when I was writing this was, God, I never had one of those guys. My teachers were fine, but they were always extremely, fallible, and no one was really giving me that kind of advice. So I wondered what it would be like if, the teachers and the magicians are all, quite human and fallible, and they don't tend to give the kids that guidance, which is made all the harder by the fact that there isn't immediately obvious to them, there's some villain that they're out there and they're supposed to be fighting. So I kind of deliberately left the ethical component of Quentin's education out, so that he would be forced to do that work himself. And he does, but it's much more. I think it's much more difficult than a lot of. He has it a lot harder than a lot of heroes have it.